Hello all, hope you've been enjoying the series so far. I've been doing some soul searching where the series is concerned, and in this regard, I've received a lot of much needed feedback and advice. This video is meant to summarize everything that has been discussed in the last 3 episodes, and distill from it a golden thread. The end of that thread will be tied in the final episode. A lot of what was brought up will not be included in this summary because I only want to abstract the core narrative and frankly represent only my opinion as it is now. The excess material will be left for my viewer to contemplate while watching the respective videos, which I will leave up. Questions are always welcome. So here we go. I started off approaching the story psychologically. My knowledge of symbolism was minimal at this point, and the first 2 videos were quite convoluted. The third one just went into tangents. I did, however, touch upon some key elements. The first being Link's search for meaning, and the second, his encounter with his dark side, his inner periphery, as I call it, the part of his being that lurks at the edge of what he knows himself to be. Link, now stripped of his identity as a hero, which he never got to be in this timeline, mind you, having been able to warn the king and all that, is now wandering in search of his childhood friend, Navi. You might well say that he's looking for the childhood he never got to have, if we consider what Navi means to Link, who grew up without a fairy in the Kokiri forest, which made him kind of an outcast, and then he was forced to face all of these terrible enemies long before ever becoming an adult. And by becoming an adult, I mean waking up from a sleep that lasted 7 years, and then it's like, okay, I'm in this adult body, and it's all very confusing and all of that. So, Navi then. Analyzing the symbolic structure of, or nature of Navi brought us to Knef, this Egyptian deity whose name means soul breath or spirit. We saw that this concept could be found in Western religious thought as, say, Hermes, who is the messenger of the gods in Greek mythology. It is a symbol of the way in which the higher interacts with the lower. From this, I concluded that if Link was following something that had these meanings attached to it, then we could think of it as him both trying to reconnect with who he is and to approach something beyond that, something higher than himself. This search for meaning led him into the depths of his past home, which is to say the depths of his own heart. What he encountered was a resentful and malevolent little creature who had been mingling with the mask of evil. Throughout the series, we have seen Skull Kid from different angles, both as the shadow, the dark person within every individual, and the archetypal adversary, the individual who chooses to side with evil, kind of a personification of evil itself. Skull Kid is a mischievous imp who was removed from his circle of friends. We see that he does not respond to his pain earnestly. Instead, his anger caused him to commit far worse deeds. When we see him put on the mask, we can see in this the ultimate sin, because wearing the mask of evil signifies an identification with evil. Likewise, Link is in some sense banished as well. He misses his friend too, and does not know why she left him. He resents the fact that he suffered in a different time, only to be withheld the praise he deserves in this time, and the experience that made him who he is in a sense no longer real. Link might in fact be feeling quite angry. So in that sense, his meeting with Skull Kid could be thought of as a meeting with his own shadow. These meanings unite when we consider the fact that evil within you is the same thing as evil within someone else, or everyone else. It is simply evil, and it is encountered inside and outside. This encounter was a shock to Link, but he saw it through. Unfortunately for him, it pulled him way down into the deep, to the very bottom of his soul's trunk, as it were. And at the bottom of the tree is where the roots sort of diverge. The identity of Link the Hylian is split into a multitude of things and stops making sense. We see him take on a degraded form. He is robbed of a coherent essence, which leaves him powerless. Yet this little sapling form holds a symbolic potential within it. Tattle, the light fairy, reminds Link of that, while Skull Kid remains with nothing but pure darkness, again suggesting this dichotomy between shadow and light. Link and Tattle decide to make things better, whereas Skull Kid only wants to make things worse and really commits to that from that point forward. Tail is not on board with this, because no one can live without meaning and ideals. When Cain killed Abel, he knew he was doomed, and Tail could in that sense be seen as the part of Skull Kid that consists of his pain and his regrets, which were his true motives to begin with. Pain and anger, especially when repressed, are what feeds the shadow, and then you put on the mask. Tail wants his sister back, which makes symbolic sense too, because Skull Kid has in a sense been robbed of his lighter counterpart, his better impulses, whatever you want to call it. So what does this tell us? Link, while journeying towards virtue, encounters the enemy of virtue, which upsets and confuses him greatly because he also sees it in himself. The contrast between good and evil is made, and it is clear what must be done. As always, good must triumph. So when Link presses on, he finds that his whole world turns upside down. He no longer feels like he understands life. Plainly put, the world stops making sense. He comes into a foreign land which looks like Hyrule, but is different in many ways. It is, however, structured the same way any world is, though not quite properly, as we will see. Clock Tower is the most important place in Termina, because this is where communion with the Terminian deities can take place during the Carnival of Time. The structure of the carnival echoes a very similar idea to our own New Year's Eve, because it conveys this pattern of initial chaos, creation, emergent chaos, and recreation. During the carnival, the latter two are enacted by these frivolous celebrations, these masks, the dancing, music, the adoption of godlike personas by wearing these masks, and the dropping of the phallic top of the clock tower, which signals a fall of the central authority. A fall of the one, so which culminates in this reign of plurality before the grand unification, and then that's followed by a gathering on the now formed platform, where the giants are addressed with a request for fertility. Because the tower embodies the ontology of the cosmos of all space and time, Clocktown is the center of Termina. Clocktown is a walled-in city, a closed round shape, which is the shape of one. It's the shape of unity. It is a place where categories are neatly divided. Relatively speaking, we are talking about a bizarre fairy tale sort of video game, but anyway. But again, Link must move towards the edge of himself, the edge of Hyrule, and now the edge of Termina. Because Termina is dying, it's unable to sustain itself. It's going to be crushed within 3 days. And to find the solution, you must, in a sense, the solution lies within it, but also there has to be a dialectic without. And that sounds kind of abstract, but you'll see what I mean. At the beginning of his journey along the edge, Link encounters rot and decay, which are forms of fragmentation, of the divergence at the roots, like before. Woodfall is a swamp, after all. We find that this swamp, which is supposed to form a healthy buffer where things are constantly changing, as in the cycle of an ecosystem, is actually poisoned with rigidity. And you have to keep that in mind when you're thinking about Clocktown. And in Woodfall we find yet more upside-downness. The marginal creatures of the edge, the Deku, are acting as a rigid center themselves. The Deku King is abusing this benign monkey fella under false charges. In order to save the swamp, then, Link must himself become a Deku again, a marginal creature, and he must pay heed to the advice of the monkey, who is also a marginal creature, especially in that position. And Link faces his challenges with humility and bravery. He slays Odolwa, another foreigner, a peripheral being, a monster, a composite sort of thing, and he recovers the princess. It is this event that seems to recover the swamp to what it should be. Not only does the water become sweet again, but the Deku King is also brought to his senses, so the whole problem is solved by this event. Now I'm going to give you one final summary to help you cinch the idea. What we see is a person on the edge, trying to restore the center of the world by reaching to its edge. A movement from confusion to unity, both on the personal and social level. While Link is trying to get a grip on who he is, he puts things back together the way they should be, not only himself but the rest of the world also. You could say that this is exactly who he is, and this is what he is meant to do. He is a Hylian who grew up at the edge of Hyrule as a Kokiri, and among the Kokiri, he was on the edge of that society too. He is a child who fits into small crevices, and he can shapeshift to get into even stranger places and to do all sorts of strange magical things, which is and actually turns out to be necessary in order to solve all of the problems. You could say that if you're a part of the problem, you need to be part of something else in order to take part in the solution. Now, this weird shapeshifter person sounds like a really weird person, but this is exactly the person who restores Termina, which to us is upside down Hyrule. So we begin to get this idea that when the world is crooked, there is no use in thinking straight all of the time. But the goal is not to be crooked, the goal is to be straight. Link does not accept the evil and the crookedness in the world, he does everything he can to wash it away. What we see is the story of a hero in exile, who needs time away from his proper place in order to figure out what that place is and what it means to him. So now I hope that this has cleared up the mire of ideas that you encounter in these videos. From now on, I will do my best to keep things as concise and accessible as I can. My video on Snowhead will be my first chance to keep that promise. With all of that said, please let me know if you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you swing by for part 5.